Good morning. Good to be here all together. Good to be just looking out and seeing your faces. It's so encouraging to see people that I know and I care about. Smiling back to me helps too. Good to see you all. Good to just be in a place of belonging together. It's just great. Our biblical text today comes out of Deuteronomy chapter 1. And in Deuteronomy chapter 1, Moses is giving his farewell address to the Israelites. God has just told Moses that he will not be going into the promised land, and that in fact Moses was going to be dying soon. As the shepherd of his people, as the one who's led them for 40 years out of slavery and through the wilderness, Moses gets one more chance to encourage and to instruct his people, the people he loves. This first chapter in Deuteronomy opens with a brief recap of the history of the Israelites, and that's where our text comes from today. In Deuteronomy 1:22 through 33, Moses retells the story that was originally found in Numbers 13, the story of the spies going into the land to scope out the promised land. Some of you may remember that story. But the Israelites' story doesn't start here in Deuteronomy. We have to go back to Genesis. And in Genesis, we see God's promise to Abraham that even though he and his wife are pushing 100, he's going to make a people out of them, and he's going to give them a land, a place in which to flourish. And then we see, so that was Genesis, and then a book later is Exodus. And in Exodus, we see that Abraham's descendants, the Israelites, had endured a famine. And this famine was so extreme, they had to immigrate to another country to find food. And in that country, they ended up as slaves in this new land, this land far away from home, far away from that promise. In Egypt, the Israelites experienced intense cruelty and abuse for 440 years. Then God rescued them out of slavery by unbelievable miracles. And now we find them here, just outside the promised land and just outside of home. But there's a problem. They just got word about home. They just got word about this home, this place that was supposed to be safe, free from the terror of oppression, and it's inhabited by their enemies, the Amorites. Just imagine that. What? That's got to be terrifying. So what kind of God would lead them out of difficulty only to go right back into difficulty? Like, I thought God was supposed to be rescuing them from the difficulty. Why are they now facing difficulty? So how do they trust this God? How do they trust God when their life doesn't look like they thought it would? And do these circumstances mean that God had abandoned them? If we turn to our text here, let's just see what happened. So here we are in Deuteronomy 1. In verse 21, Moses gives them a command. And every time you hear Moses talking in the prophetic books, these books with prophets, we know that Moses, the prophet, we just assume that's God, like he's speaking for God. So Moses is giving them a command. And he says, "See, the Lord your God has given the land to you. Go up, take possession, as the Lord, the God of your ancestors has promised you. Do not fear or be dismayed." And then just a verse later, we read the Israelites' response to that command. "All of you came to me." So Moses is saying, all the Israelites, they came to me. You came to me and you said, "Let us send men ahead of us to explore the land for us and bring back a report to us regarding the route by which we should go up and the cities we will come to. The plan seemed good to me, and I selected 12 of you, one from each tribe." So we see that the leaders of Israel are having a strategic planning meeting. I don't know if any of you ever sat in a strategic planning meeting, but they're having this strategic planning meeting to decide how best should we step into this promise. So they decide to send spies to scope it out, to find the best way in and to see what they're up against. And this makes total sense, right? But let's go back and just review. What did God say in verse 21? See, the Lord your God has given the land to you. So send spies in to check it out and make sure you can do this. Make sure you're strong enough. Make sure you're well equipped enough and safe enough and you know how to handle this. Nope, that's not what God said. That's not what he said. Actually, he said, see, the Lord your God has given you the land. Go up and take possession, as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has promised you. Do not fear or be dismayed. Do not fear or be dismayed. Why? Why would Moses mention fear and discouragement here? I think because it's real. It's real. It's totally normal, totally human to be afraid of the unknown. Absolutely normal. And it's totally normal and human to get discouraged when things don't work out like we thought they would. The Israelites were scared, and it made perfect sense. For the past 440 years, they suffered under Pharaoh, who had commissioned cruel slave masters to beat them, mistreat them, demand everything of them, kill their children. Pharaoh could not be trusted. He didn't care about them. He used them for his good and their destruction. Would God be the same? This kind of trauma from years of pain and years of oppression, this kind of trauma, it gets hardwired into us as fear. Relearning to trust God after centuries of slavery, it wasn't going to be overnight. And we see that in their response. We see that in Israel's response. The spies go out, they come back with a report, and then Israel responds, and we see and we can feel their fear. It says here in verse 24, they set out, that's the spies, they set out and went up into the hill country, and when they reached the valley of Eshcol, they spied it out and gathered some of the land's produce, which they brought down to us. They brought back a report to us and said, it is a good land that the Lord our God is giving us. But you were unwilling to go up. You rebelled against the command of the Lord your God. You grumbled in your tents and said, it is because the Lord hates us that he has brought us out here, out of the land of Egypt, to hand us over to the Amorites to destroy us. Where are we headed? Our kindred have made our hearts melt by reporting. The people are stronger and taller than we. The cities are large and fortified up to heaven. We actually saw the offspring of Anakim, the giants, the 9 feet tall people. Those words, though, when I read this, the words, it is because the Lord hates us. That's heavy. That's heavy. The words love and hate, they meant something different to the Israelite listener in the Hebrew Bible. Love and hate, they were treaty words, like words of covenant. What the Israelites were really saying was, has God given up on his covenant with us? They were trying to make sense of what they saw. They saw the good produce. That must mean God is good. And then they saw the giants and the walls. What does that mean? What do the giants mean? And by the way, how in the world would a bunch of homeless former slaves have the tools, the equipment, the battle skills, and the training to take on giants? The Israelites said, does God hate us That he brought us out here just to kill us in battle? What in the world, God? What in the world? Is this it? Are we going to just die out here? Do you even care? And here's where I hear my own heart. Here's where I hear my fear in their cries. It is because the Lord hates us that he brought us here. I also hear my coping with fear and my development of strategies and making plans and making promises to myself. I will never be hurt like that again. I will only do what is safe. I will only do what I know how to do. I won't try anything new because I will never fail then. And God, I don't think I can trust you. In 2015, God rescued me out of my own Egypt, and that rescue meant I had to leave the church I loved. It was really hard, painful, lonely, and exhausting, but something in me knew that I was being set free. Something in me knew that I was being rescued, but it felt lousy. It felt awful. I had no idea how I was going to move on with my life, and I didn't see it getting any better. How could God have led me to such pain? Had God abandoned me? Some of us in the room might be facing the same thing, rescued from the way life used to be, but yet feeling like you're standing just outside the promised land and you're scared and discouraged. You are facing your own giants. You're looking at walls that seem incredibly impassable. You are facing relational upheaval, job insecurity, health crises, a pandemic, the fear of the future of our world, the violence we're seeing. It's scary. Like Israel, I've heard about the report of this huge clusters of God's goodness just inside that wall, just inside what's next. But all you can see are the giants and the walls, the unsurmountable walls. And let's be real, life is hard. COVID has been hard. The political and social unrest in our country has been hard. And come on, we're humans, I bet at some point in your life has been hard. You've lost loved ones too early. Marriages have ended. You've had illnesses and diagnoses. Money has run out. Dreams have died. Life is challenging. So what do those challenges mean? Does it mean that God doesn't love us or care about our circumstances? I think that's a fair question. What am I looking at here, God? I don't think he's shocked. He's not surprised. He can say, oh my gosh, you thought that. I didn't know that was happening. Those are things God doesn't say. We can ask the questions, what does this mean? Do the giants in the walls mean that God has abandoned us? No. No. God has never, will never abandon us. In our biblical text, after we read of the Israelites' fear, we read Moses' response to their fear. I, Moses, said to you, have no dread or fear of them. I think sometimes we read those words and we think he's like pointing a finger and wagging it at them. Hear the compassion of a man who loves them. Have no fear, no dread of them. The Lord, your God, who goes before you, is the one who will fight for you, just as he did in Egypt, before your very eyes. And in the wilderness, just as one carries a child all that way that you traveled until you reached this very place. Moses encourages them not to fear the giants, which is easier said than done. He reminds them of God's presence with them and God's activity in the situation, working things out for their good. God goes into the challenge first. He is fighting for Israel, dealing with the giants in the wall. That's not Israel's job. They didn't need to worry, to plan, to strategize a way around the giants or a way through the wall, because God had already made a plan to remove them. God was already weakening the giants in the wall before Israel ever set foot in the land. God was doing what people could not do. Even though they couldn't see it, God was taking care of the impossible. The same God who fought for them in Egypt with all the locusts and the frogs and the darkness and even the death of Egypt's firstborn, the fire, the cloud, the split sea, the barricades of or the walls of water held so they could walk through it, and then this cascading avalanche destroying their tormentors. They saw this God with their own eyes. They saw him. And the same God that was with them in Egypt, in the wilderness, was not done. He had not changed. However, our text tells us that in spite of this, the Israelites had no trust in their God. The Israelites refused to go up into the land. And I think it's easy to just point our fingers at them and say, you saw God. What's your problem? Why didn't you just go? But I don't think God's like that. I wonder if in their trauma they froze, like fight or flight. They just froze with fear, paralyzed, that God would turn out to be another Pharaoh. Yet God didn't leave them in that moment of frozen fear. He didn't ditch them. God didn't leave them. He carried them through their wanderings, their confusion, their doubts, their questions, their isolation, their desert, like a parent who scoops up their child who's just too tired to walk anymore. God didn't make them go up into the promised land, for that's not his way. But God never left them, not once. Each day, the cloud led them into the next stop. And each night, the fire kept watch over them. Each morning, bread fell from heaven, and water came out of dried up rocks. God kept doing the impossible. And it wasn't because Israel was like so great and so full of faith. God was just God. God was just God, doing the impossible, taller than any giant, stronger than any wall, the God of pure, steadfast love who wanted to lead his children to a place far away from the slavery, far away from the bondage, a place where they could flourish, a place where they could freely know him and be known by him, a place where they could freely know each other and thrive. No walls, no giants, no Pharaoh. A place of flourishing. We've all read and heard and seen stories of God's faithfulness to people enduring huge life challenges. Martin Luther King Jr., we're familiar, right? Martin Luther King Jr. faced death threats, like people calling him on the phone saying that he would be killed just for fighting for justice. Bomb threats. He's facing this in the civil rights movement, and this is the story he recalls. I was ready to give up. With my cup of coffee sitting untouched before me, I tried to think of a way to move out of the picture without appearing a coward. In this state of exhaustion, when my courage had all but gone, I decided to take my problem to God. With my head in my hands, I bowed over the kitchen table and prayed aloud. The words I spoke to God that midnight are still vivid in my memory. I am here taking a stand for what I believe is right, but now I'm afraid. The people are looking to me for leadership, and if I stand before them without strength and courage, they too will falter. I'm at the end of my powers. I have nothing left. I've come to the point where I can't face it alone. And at that moment, I experienced the presence of the divine as I had never experienced God before. It seemed as though I could hear the quiet assurance of an inner voice saying, stand up for justice. Stand up for truth. And God will be by your side forever. Wow. Almost at once, my fears began to go. My uncertainty disappeared, and I was ready to face anything. Our beloved Florence, whose life we celebrated on Friday, knew difficulty and knew the faithfulness of her God. She lived through the Great Depression, World War II. She knew challenge and pain and sorrow and loss. Yet on her deathbed, it was scripture and hymns that stirred her. It was the thought of God and his love and his faithfulness that roused her. God was faithful to her all her days until the moment he called her home. And you, my friends, were rescued because God loves you. You were carried like a parent carries a child who's weak in the hardest parts of your life. And God will not stop now. He will not. He has gone before you to prepare a place for you. And while you walk up into it, God will be with you day and night, cloud and fire. His presence will surround you and lead you and never, ever forsake you. Hear me, please. The giants are just giants. And the walls are just walls. They do not get a say. They do not get a say in God's love and his goodness and his faithfulness to you. They don't get a say. Your God has gone before you and will bring you safely home. God will never abandon you. Amen.